Welcome to Faces of Farming. I'm Cheryl Mitchell. I'm the president of Tree Leaven and also one of the farm to community mentors for NOFA, the Northeast Organic Farming Association. And I'm thrilled to have as our guest today Abbie Nelson, who knows so much more about NOFA than I will probably ever learn, but who has also been involved with many of the different aspects of connecting farms, schools, and communities. So Abbie, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks
Very
for coming.
happy to be here.
Okay. Maybe we could start with you just telling a little bit. I know that you didn't start out as a NOFA farmer.
No.
You have a different background. What your journey was to come to this position that you're in now?
It is not that unusual a journey, I don't think. I started out as a teacher in an alternative school as well as in public school, and I specialized in young children. Then I decided to get a special ed degree, and my degree is, I got it in New York City, and it is with deaf and hard of hearing children. And at that point, my husband and I wanted to move and looked around for small cities, and Burlington was one of the ones. And we looked no further once we got here. And so the only jobs for deaf and hard of hearing teachers would have been Austin School for the Deaf in Southern Vermont, and this new consultancy for mainstream deaf and hard of hearing kids. So we didn't want to move to Southern Vermont, and we decided we'd stay in the north. So I became the consultant for deaf and hard of hearing in Central Vermont, and then later in Milton, where there were many kids with mostly hearing aids. And all throughout this, I maintained an interest in gardening and farming, and my father was a very eclectic farmer. He'd get an idea and he would implement it in the middle of a field. It didn't matter to him. We had a Onondaga Indian territory near us, and he was talking with one of the chiefs who told him to put fish heads in with the peppers, and next thing you know, there's fish heads in with the peppers. Did
it work?
Yeah, there were good peppers that year, but it didn't mean that he did it the next year. You see, it was just catch as catch came. Anyway, I don't know if that was that or if it was making berry and dirt stews for my mother to put on the stove to serve.
Berry and dirt?
Berry and dirt and water. You know, playing outside, a little of this, a little of that. But all of that was sort of a thread in the background of my life, and as well as cooking, and cooking for people was very important to me. So eventually, special ed, having the rigors of special education and regular education, I decided to take a sabbatical and got a grant and started studying horticulture and worked on a farm.
At UVM or someplace
No,
else? No.
Well, yes, I took some horticulture classes at UVM, and then I worked at Arcana Farm in Jericho. And really enjoyed the intersection of people and agriculture and people and food. And so I interviewed about 35 people to look at teens and agriculture and food and agriculture, and in the process, once you start interviewing 35 people, you may as well have interviewed the entire state because everybody knows everybody. And just at that point, a job came up at NOFA to run a farm education conference, ag education conference, and that led to the development of the Farm to Community Mentor Program. There were numbers of farmers who really wanted to have more of a connection with the schools in their community, and their kids were going there. And so felt that most of the people in the school had no understanding both of agriculture, specifically of where food came from, and also no relationship of the food to what was being served in the school.
In the school.
So the Farm to Community Mentor program developed, and I became the first coordinator, and so far the only coordinator. So that developed in 2000, so we're into our 14th year here.
Well, that's
And-
right. You're giving out plaques this year to farmers. And
we're giving out
yeah.
plaques to farmers who've been writing to classes for over 3 years. And that started both just trying to reconnect people to agriculture. And so our mentors have been farmers and educators, probably the vast majority farmers who are drawn to this position partly because it's very part-time and partly because they really are educators at heart as well. And so that program flourished, and while it's...
And you now have a mentor in every part of the state?
We have 9 regional mentors. Some mentors have one county, some have multiple counties. And they are reconnecting the community. Used to be called Farm to School Mentors at the time when Farm to School was not that hot. Actually, it was hot in California, but it wasn't hot in Vermont. And so at the same time that the Farm to Community Mentors were being developed, this creature called Vermont Feed, Food Education Every Day, was being created by 3 ag education partners. So NOFA Vermont and Shelburne Farms and FoodWorks at Two Rivers Center created this feed thing, which ended up being Farm to School in Vermont statewide. And so suddenly we're running that as well. And so we changed Farm to School Mentors to Farm to Community Mentors so we could focus on other parts of the community and connections. And we can talk more about that, but just to finish the sort of generation of feed. So feed also has been around for 13 to 14 years, depending on what marker you use. And the role I play in it is I'm a program director for feed. And it's basically trying to catalyze change in the school food system. So we do this through what we call the 3 C's, through the cafeteria, the classroom, and the community. And that is something that's going along with a very, in-school, public school educational bent. Whereas the Farm to Community Mentor program is more what's happening. We definitely deal with what's happening in the school, but also what's happening outside of the school.
Right. So some of those things are you're promoting things like CSAs and farm stands and farmers markets?
Yes. Our mentor program just got a grant where we are trying to help communities be more aware of the direct marketing opportunities in their towns and region and county. And that has to do with what are the CSAs, how do CSAs work, how does food access work with farmers market and CSA, so that would be through the EBT and family food
Could
coupon
you,
program.
for people that don't know what EBT stands for?
Electronic benefit transfer.
Okay.
So it's basically what used to be called food stamps, only now it's much more sophisticated with a credit card looking thing that can be scanned and used to buy fresh foods at market or at a CSA.
Right.
Yeah, so that's one of our big projects with our Farm to Community Mentors, as you well know.
Yeah, yeah. And are you also, it sounds like these things took off almost simultaneously, the Farm to Community and the Farm to School. And I'm wondering if they have different goals or if it's all the same thing with just a little bit of a different focus.
I would say that there's different goals and they intersect. And maybe they intersect more because I'm doing both programs.
Could
Highly
be.
possible.
Right.
But also because if you're dealing with local food and local agriculture, there's going to be intersections, and you can't have either program without having food and agriculture being at the center. And so therefore, the point being that if we are more connected to our food and how it's created and grown, then we put more value towards it. And if we put more value towards it, then we're putting more value to what are we eating, do we value our choices and our bodies and so forth. And all of that trickles down into all the different ways that people eat and use and raise food. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's the center point. And then the Vermont Feed is very much educational. Our partners, Shelburne Farms, are working on all of the new standards, including the science and technology standards, to connect food, farm, and agriculture to those standards. And given that teachers have so much that is demanded of them, it helps to have a system or an organization that helps them think about, well, how could that math lesson be a nutrition lesson? How could that science lesson be an agricultural lesson? So that's really very deep in our feed world, as well as my angle is to work with food service directors on how to incorporate local foods. Where do you find them? How do you get them? How do you use them? What's the training?
What's your guess about how many schools have embraced buying local? Or organic, or at least regional?
It's a very hard number to say, and USDA is desperately trying to figure it out with census that they started 2 years ago and is again coming through. So they're getting schools to fill this census out. I would say 2/3 of the schools are solidly working on some aspect of farm to school.
Wow.
Some might just be buying apples because that's a crop that's used in schools all the time, and we have a lot of great orchards. They may be getting product that they don't know is Vermont product because we've infiltrated the system, the supply chain, so that we're getting more food into the supply chain without having to make those extra direct sales arrangements.
So Vermont Feed helps to make that process a little bit easier. It sounded like there's a lot of complications for schools trying to buy direct from farmers.
Yes.
And that you all are the main supports in helping people understand and make that work.
Some would say that we're making it more difficult because we're changing. You look at a supply chain from buyer who does the ordering to the movement of the food to the, from the seller who is the farmer who's selling it to a middle person who's then selling it to a school who's then delivering it to the school, and then the school is doing something with it.
Right.
And you could say that from the seller to the buyer was a pretty flawless system. If you think about perishability of food, most food gets to the final buyer in a condition to use it in the way that they expect to, in the size and shape and cost and so forth. And we're meddling with the supply chain, right?
Yes, I see.
And so by doing that, we call ourselves supply chain facilitators, which is a nice way of saying that we're meddling with the system. And we're trying to build in some identification of what's being sold, the quality of what's being sold, and then involving more of our Vermont farmers in the deal, which can be difficult when you're talking about an institution. It isn't a chef who's ordering pea pods or pea tendrils or fresh mushrooms. This is an institution. And we're focused on institutions because that's where most of the people are, most of the kids. And we've branched out into hospitals and colleges, and so we're really looking at the whole food system of how do you make fresh food, how do you make local and Vermont and regional food available to those people who are in these institutional settings. It's not calling it a bad thing. It's calling it a place where many people are fed.
So the whole concept of food systems, which there seems to be such a buzz about it right now, and 5 years ago, I certainly hadn't heard people talking that way.
Right.
What do you attribute that to?
I think it's everything from cooking shows, to restaurants standing out by featuring unusual foods. And it's if you can name where the food's coming from, it ends up having more value to people.
Right.
And so I also think it's the just the raising the awareness. And yeah, I'll take credit for feed that we've brought it to the attention in a small state, yes, to say, let's reconnect to the food that we're eating. Let's start with the kids.
Are you also seeing a change? You said these programs are about 13 to 14 years old. We were talking with Eugenie Doyle a while back, who has seen just agriculture in Vermont change. She was one of the first organic dairy farms, and they're not doing dairy anymore. And it seems as if there's been a big growth in smaller, more diversified farms rather than just big dairy. I'm curious what other changes you've seen and why you think it's happening.
Well, I think one is that people are concerned about the average age of the farmers we have farming, and inheriting the farms, and young people getting into farming. So more money and attention has been put into beginning farmer programs and getting folks interested in that. So I think that has played a part. I think, the federal government plays a part in terms of where they'll put their funds. I think that awareness of, you could say it's the land trusts who are putting attention on preserving land. It's health and the various health crises that we've had. Certainly the rise in obesity with children coincided with the rise, or rather helped, you would say, unfortunately, the rise of farm to school, and just bringing attention to fresh and whole products instead of processed products. So I think that, I would say health and land and who's farming our food, and attention to how food is made. And truly, you could say cooking shows, well, who was paying attention to watching people cook before?
Yeah, and now
it's all
amazing.
The rage.
Right.
In fact, we've been for 8 years now running a cooking competition for kids. And so middle school and high school, it's called Junior Iron Chef.
Wow.
And that just got completed. But we had
Could you describe what that was like? Was it at the Champlain Valley Expo?
It was at the Champlain Valley Expo, and it was 61 middle and high school teams. They have 90 minutes to cook from start to finish on tabletop burners. The first year that we ran it, we blew all the fuses with electric. So we only have propane little burners that they can cook on, which they don't have to cook. And Blodgett Ovens donates ovens that, and they staff them. And so the kids can bake things or roast things. So that's been an added feature. And we have a morning heat and an afternoon heat. And we have different awards, Lively Local and Best of Show, and of course I can't remember the third award, but we have 12 teams that win awards. And what we hear is that it's not just the winning, it's the whole process, the build-up of picking the recipe, getting the team working, how do you be efficient, how do you time your stuff. It's really high-level skills.
Sounds great. Yeah.
It does.
I'm thinking about some other things that you're doing to promote this whole concept of our local farms. One, can you talk some about the Open Farms program that's coming up in August?
Oh yeah, the Open Farm Day is, oh no, it's not a day, it's a whole week. It's Open Farm Week from August 3rd to 9th. And the mentors are going to play a role in it, because the mentors know their areas better than I could from my Richmond office. And so the mentors are going to be scouting around for farms that can be open one day or several days. It's similar to the Maple Weekend that we just got through, and it's the idea of, well, bring people on the farm. And some farms will be doing activities, some will be just casual, open, come see what we're doing. I'm pretty sure that it'll be varied in terms of what happens. But that's August 3rd through 9th. It'll be very exciting. And then, of course, you well know that our farmer correspondence, which Eugenie Doyle has been one for ages, our culminating spring activity is that the farmers who have been writing to the classroom then can host that classroom on their farm, right?
Right, and those visits I hear so anticipated.
Yes,
So
and I think, do you know how many you have in your
I don't know how many will actually end up going to the farm. Sometimes the farmers will go to the preschool or something. It depends some on transportation.
Right.
I think there'll probably be 10 visits this spring
right.
on the
and,
farms.
Right, and Middlebury Co-op is playing a role in that.
Middlebury Co-op has been fantastic.
Right,
there.
and they are supporting their stipend for the farmers and providing transportation, so that's really a great plus.
It is this partnership between NOFA and Shelburne Farms, between NOFA and the Middlebury Food Co-op. I just feel like you're sort of helping to make all these connections in different places.
I think it's about weaving, and it's weaving those connections with people. And again, it's sort of back to what I was saying, that I'm very interested in the intersection of agriculture and people and food and people and all that comes with it. And so all of these programs do that. It can be with kids, it can be with adults. Oh, and don't forget, we have Ag Literacy Week, the 3rd week of November, right? And that's something the mentors are involved in. So all of these things, while you could say, well, it's so artificial, what difference does it make if it's just a week or whatever? But it sort of marks it and lets people know that, oh yeah, we could go to a farm, we could see what's going on and really reconnect with the food system in a way that's genuine and lets them appreciate and better understand both the state and our agriculture, but also what's available to them.
Yeah, we may run out of time, and I just need to check and make sure that if there's anything that you wanted to talk about and I didn't ask.
Boy, and we think about all the things that we're doing, and I'm not sure. I mean, I could go on and on.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
One is the whole focus on farm to school is academic year, but what's the summer equivalent when the schools are closed?
Well, we are actually working on that right now. We're calling it Farm to School 12 months of the year. And so one of the complaints of the farmers is, hey, we have an abundance when schools are out of session, but the rise in summer meal programs, thanks to Hunger Free Vermont, has occurred over the last 3 years with their hard work. And so we have many sites that are feeding kids in the summer. And so FEED wants to take some time to develop short nutrition lessons and help those folks who are providing those meals access local food. And so that will be a big focus for us in the next 2 years.
Great. And I have had a special interest in people who live in kind of isolated parts of this rural state, either in mobile home parks or just people who don't have cars. And I'm wondering if you have plans for involving those communities at some point.
It's possible. There are food service directors who are driving meals to parks and various places. And it's tricky, it's tricky to have the right vehicle, the timing and everything. What we are doing, if we get the funding, is we are looking at piloting summer meals on the weekend at a farmer's market to draw the attention to the families who can buy at the market, who may be intimidated or not really understand that they could actually buy products that are fitting for their budget, and also taste test and provide a meal to kids.
Oh, that's very
and
exciting.
Have it be more of an experience. So we'll see if that works, and it's not really addressing the ruralness that you're referring to.
But it's certainly a starting
yes,
place.
and certainly there are people like Green Mountain Farm to School who's doing a mobile summer meal truck, and that's working in some of the smaller communities. But it's a lot to run, you can imagine.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you took a sabbatical and ended up with a whole new, very interesting and fabulous career.
Which I could not have predicted.
Yeah. Well, I so much appreciate you taking the time
Yes,
to
I
come and
appreciate it.
talk with us today.
Thanks.
Thank you. And we'd also like to say thank you to Kurt Broderson, who's producing this show, and to Middlebury Community Access Television. If you all have information that you want to get to the public, call them up because they're great to work with. Thanks for watching, and hope you'll come next week.